Young black boy vanished in 1993 to 9 years later FBI agents found what still haunts them today. It happened in October of 1993, in a quiet part of Alabama, just south of Tuscaloosa, in a rural town called Brentwood Hollow. If you looked it up on a map, you might miss it. One blinking traffic light, a gas station with more dust than diesel, and houses so far apart the mailman only drove through twice a week. The kind of town where everyone claims to know everyone, until someone disappears. The boy's name was Jamari Lattimore. He was 10 years old when he vanished. 5th grade. Loved comic books, running barefoot across the red clay backroads, and staying up late to draw cartoons his mother said looked like baby dreams with teeth. He was the youngest of 3. His father, Darnell, worked nights at a paper mill, and his mother, Sylvia, cleaned houses on the north side of town. Church on Sundays, school during the week, yard work on Saturdays. There was no history of violence. No strange men driving around. No neighborhood alerts. The Hollow was poor, yes, segregated still in many quiet ways, but it wasn't known for danger. Until that one Wednesday. Jamari had stayed after school to finish a poster for his class project on Martin Luther King Jr. His teacher remembered seeing him leave the classroom alone at 3:52 p.m. By 4:30, he hadn't shown up at home. By 6:00, his mother was calling every neighbor. By 8:15, the sheriff's office had 2 deputies searching the roads and creek beds with flashlights. No blood. No signs of a struggle. No evidence that he'd even made it past the back gate of the elementary school. All that was left was a single piece of printer paper, his MLK poster, found half wedged under the fence beside the school garden, smudged with dirt and one red fingerprint they could never match. The town fell into silence after that. Posters were stapled to telephone poles. Prayer circles were formed. Kids were walked to school by parents gripping their hands a little too tightly. But after 3 weeks, nothing. No calls. No ransom. No body. The Brentwood Hollow police eventually filed it under missing minor, suspected runaway, though no one who knew Jamari believed he ran anywhere on his own. He didn't even like staying over at his cousin's house without checking in. For a while, life in the Hollow returned to what it was. Or at least, pretended to. But 9 years later, in the spring of 2002, 2 FBI agents walked into that same school, now nearly condemned. Windows cracked and roof sagging, with a box of files, a ground-penetrating radar unit, and a sealed envelope marked confidential. RE, case number 22073, JL. And by the time they walked out, the agents looked different. Like they'd seen something that didn't match the laws they were trained to believe in. One of them requested leave within the month. The other, a woman named Agent Claudia Rusk, submitted a report that was immediately restricted to internal access only. All she wrote in the final line of that report was this: "I am not trained for this. What we found, it shouldn't exist." Agent Claudia Rusk had only recently transferred to the Montgomery field office when the Jamari Lattimore case landed back on someone's desk. It wasn't a random reactivation, there had been a call. An anonymous tip, routed through an untraceable burner, left on the Bureau's public line. A man's voice, older, possibly Southern, with the following message: "Check under the school. Where the roots twist. He's still there. Not alone." The original agent assigned to the missing persons desk might have dismissed it as a prank, if not for the strange synchronicity. Earlier that same week, a forestry department drone had flown over the old Brentwood Hollow elementary grounds. It was part of a land assessment plan. They were preparing to sell the land to developers. During a routine image scan, the drone caught an infrared anomaly beneath the gymnasium floor. A rectangular patch, roughly 6 feet wide and 12 feet long, showing a consistent thermal depression. As if the soil had been disturbed recently. But the school had been shut down since 1997. And according to local records, no one had been inside since 1999, when squatters broke in and tagged the blackboards with graffiti. The combination of the two, the call and the image, was enough to trigger the Bureau's cold case unit. Claudia Rusk and her partner, Mark Tremblay, were assigned to drive out to Brentwood Hollow and investigate. On paper, it was a cursory recon. In reality, it became something entirely different. They arrived early on a Thursday morning, a light fog still sitting low over the fields. The town hadn't changed much. A new Dollar General had opened where the bait shop used to be. The church looked recently painted. But the faces were the same, older now, but familiar. Suspicious. Guarded. They parked outside the school gates. The place was rotting. The chain-link fence sagged in the middle like something had leaned on it for too long. Vines twisted up through the metal. Brown and brittle. The school itself, a single-story cinder block building with boarded-up windows, looked like it had exhaled and never drawn breath again. Claudia moved slowly, camera in hand, while Mark carried the radar equipment. They stepped into the building through a side door that had long lost its hinges. Inside, the air smelled of mold, dust, and rusted pencil sharpeners. Broken desks lay toppled in clusters. Faded posters hung limp from the walls, the alphabet, multiplication tables. A faded cutout of a cartoon apple with googly eyes. The gymnasium was at the back. A wide, open room with warped wooden floors and a line of bleachers half collapsed against one wall. That was where the drone had pinged the anomaly. Mark set up the radar. Claudia checked the perimeter. She noticed something almost immediately, a series of carvings in the gym's southern support beam. They were crude, childlike. Deep scratchings made with something sharp. Names. Over a dozen of them. Some first names. Some initials. All etched around the same height, just about waist high for a fifth grader. Jamari's was there too. But what unsettled Claudia was that his wasn't the oldest. Or the newest. Some of the names had dates. Some of those dates were after 1993. One name in particular caught her attention, LMCD, 1996. That name would later appear again in the Bureau's files, cross-referenced under another missing child report. One that had been dismissed as a family custody dispute. Never solved. Mark called her over. The radar had picked up something. The anomaly wasn't just soil disturbance, it had structure. A shape. Rectangular edges, depth, and layered content. It was a buried space, possibly an old crawl space, now sealed. But what made Mark's voice shake was that the scan didn't show a single large cavity, it showed 3 distinct compartments. And in the lowest compartment, something metallic. They marked the location. Called it in. Within 48 hours. A team was flown in to excavate. Not publicly, the school was already slated for demolition. The story they gave the local government was an environmental hazard assessment. No one in Brentwood Hollow was told the truth. They opened the gym floor on April 19, 2002. The first thing they found was a wooden hatch, hand-built, reinforced with rusted iron nails, and sealed from the inside. That alone made no sense. How do you seal something from the inside and never come back out? When they pried it open, the air that escaped was dry. Too dry. Preserved, almost. The space beneath had been insulated, somehow. The wood lining the walls wasn't rotted. It was blackened, scorched in places, but intact. Inside the first chamber, they found bones. 3 sets. 2 small, 1 adult. The adult remains were never identified. No dental matches. No prints. No family connections. But the DNA suggested a familial link to one of the children. The second chamber was different. It wasn't a grave. It was a room. Built with disturbing precision. Lined with books. Children's books. A mattress in the corner, too small for any adult. A small oil lamp. Crayon drawings still stuck to the wooden walls with pins. A plastic fork. And in the center of the room, a circle. Drawn in chalk. Not a childish doodle. Not random. A perfect circle, about 4 feet wide. Inside the circle were symbols, some matching no known language. Others resembling African tribal markings. But distorted, merged with geometric patterns that resembled alchemical signs. No footprints around it. No dust disturbed. Like it had been sealed, preserved. The third chamber, the one that showed something metallic, was sealed in a different way. Welded. They had to torch through. What they found inside that last space, no photos of it were ever released. The entire section of the case file was redacted. But one technician who worked on the site, a private contractor hired for radar analysis, gave a statement to a friend years later, which was leaked anonymously online. He claimed the third chamber contained a mirror. 7 feet tall. Black frame. No glass. But when they looked at it, some said it didn't reflect the room. It reflected something else entirely. No official report ever mentioned the mirror again. Following the discovery, the excavation team was quietly rotated out. The remaining artifacts were packed into sealed evidence containers and shipped to a federal archive facility whose name no one in Brentwood Hollow had ever heard of or would again. The school, which had already been scheduled for demolition, was razed a week later. Locals were told it was due to mold and asbestos. The charred smell that lingered afterward? Just old wood and insulation. And just like that, the site was gone. But it didn't end there. Not for Agent Claudia Rusk. She stayed on the case longer than anyone else. Long after her partner requested transfer. Long after the case was marked as closed, recovered remains. Officially, Jamari was declared deceased in 2002. The remains were buried in a plot provided by the county. No family came to claim them. The Lattimore family had moved away years earlier, forced out by rumors and whispers that never really died. Some people in the Hollow believed the Lattimores had done something. Others believed they'd been punished. No one agreed on what the boy had really been caught up in. But Claudia, she couldn't let it go. She returned to the town several times over the next year. Not as an agent. Just, alone. Quiet. Staying at a cheap motel off Route 69, eating bad coffee shop eggs, and rewalking the same spots over and over. The school grounds. The edge of Dry Creek. The lot behind the old Baptist church where Jamari had once gone to Sunday school. She started collecting local stories. Strange ones. A child in 1988 who had gone mute overnight after getting locked inside the gymnasium on a dare, and never spoke again. A custodian who died in 1995 after being found unconscious next to the southern wall of the school. Bleeding from the ears. Cause of death was listed as aneurysm. His wife later claimed he had been hearing music through the walls. In 1991, a group of boys claimed they had seen lights under the school at night, not flashlights, but glowing lines like veins pulsing in the ground. None of these incidents were ever documented officially. But Claudia found them, one by one. And as she built her personal file, a pattern started to emerge. A timeline. Not just of strange occurrences, but of disappearances. Over a 24-year span, 5 children had gone missing in the immediate Brentwood Hollow area. All under the age of 13. All black. All boys. Each time, there were no witnesses. No evidence. And in each case, something else coincided with the date of the disappearance, though it took Claudia months to piece it together. The arrival of a man. Always different names. Different addresses. Sometimes posing as a pastor. Sometimes a teacher. Once, even a census worker. But always the same face. She found it in yearbook photos. A church directory. A blurred background in a newspaper clipping from 1982. Same build. Same deep-set eyes. Same scar across the left temple. She ran facial recognition through bureau channels. Nothing. She submitted the photo to Interpol. No matches. Eventually, she showed it to a retired profiler, a man named Delaney, who had worked occult-related cases back in the 70s. He looked at the photo for a long time, said nothing for almost a full minute. Then he slid it back across the table and said, "You want my advice? Burn that picture. And forget you ever saw it." But Claudia didn't forget. The deeper she went, the more disconnected from her old life she became. She started sleeping during the day, staying awake all night, scribbling notes in red ink over old maps of the town, circling trees, marking dates that didn't make sense, cross-referencing missing person files with lunar phases. Even her handwriting started to change. She left the bureau in 2004. No resignation letter. No forwarding address. She simply stopped showing up. Years later, an intern reviewing inactive agent files came across her name and flagged it as potentially deceased, unconfirmed. But no death certificate was ever filed. No one claimed her belongings. However, in 2009, 7 years after the gym excavation, a package arrived at the Montgomery FBI office. No return address. Wrapped in butcher paper, tied with twine. Inside, a cassette tape, a Polaroid, and a torn piece of map. The tape contained 4 minutes and 44 seconds of low-volume static, followed by a voice. A child's voice. Male. Breathing hard, as if whispering close to the mic. He says 2 sentences. Tell her the mirror still works. But not for long. Then silence. The Polaroid was grainy, taken in near darkness. But the Bureau's forensics lab enhanced it. It showed the gymnasium floor, pre-demolition. The chalk circle was still visible. But now, there was something inside it. A pair of shoes. Child size. Facing outward. Like someone had been standing inside the circle, and vanished. The map? It was a portion of Brentwood Hollow. But the paper wasn't normal. It was waterproof. Fibrous. Almost like something used in old military field kits. Marked in red ink was a single word. Roots. The file containing the Polaroid, the cassette, and the map was quietly shelved. Internally, it was marked compartmentalized, referred to archival authorization R7 Delta, which effectively buried it. No active investigation followed. No follow-up was done. The FBI's public-facing records still list Jamari Lattimore as presumed deceased. But stories, they have a way of surviving. In 2011, a local history graduate student from the University of Alabama named Miles Torrance chose Brentwood Hollow for his thesis, an ethnographic study on small-town memory and the vanishing of historical events. He picked it because, in his words, it had no Wikipedia page, no urban legends, no archive trauma. It was like a clean slate. He had no idea what he was walking into. Miles started by interviewing locals. Former teachers. Church members. Gas station clerks. Some were polite. Some shut the door in his face. But one man, Harold Gunn, who had worked as a part-time janitor at the elementary school in the late 80s, agreed to talk. They met at a Waffle House just off the highway. Harold brought a photo album. Inside were candid snapshots of the school. Classroom birthday parties. Field day races. Staff Christmas potlucks. And then, out of nowhere, a photo of the gymnasium wall. The same one Claudia Rusk had once stood in front of. But this photo was taken in 1990. And in it, you could already see the names. Not just Jamari's, but others, dated before the boy had even been born. When Miles pointed this out, Harold nodded slowly. Yeah. That's what always got me. Kids used to carve them there, but half the names? We didn't have no students by those names. Not on any list. Not in any yearbook. So who carved them? That's the thing, Harold said, lowering his voice. Nobody remembers seeing it happen. They just showed up one day. Like the names had always been there. And every now and then, a new one would appear. Miles paused his project after that. For about 3 weeks, he didn't do any more interviews. He focused on reading, scanning local archives, newspapers, public records. That's when he found the zoning request from 1971, the one that built the school in the first place. It included an original survey of the land. And on that survey, faintly penciled in the bottom right corner, was a handwritten warning. Do not disturb the grove. But the gymnasium had been built directly on top of it. The next morning, Miles returned to Brentwood Hollow alone, without a recorder, without a notebook. He went to the woods behind where the school had once stood. No one saw him enter. But someone saw him leave. A state trooper, pulling off the road to check his engine, reported seeing a young man walking barefoot and silent along the tree line, his eyes unfocused, clothing dirty, arms scratched from brush. The officer stopped him, asked if he needed help. Miles didn't answer, just reached into his pocket and handed the officer a torn page from a composition notebook. On it, in cramped handwriting, were the following lines. There were no doors, but I still heard them knocking. The roots were shaped like ribs. He wasn't alone. Miles was admitted to a psychiatric facility later that night. He has not spoken since. His diagnosis, trauma-induced catatonia. But scans showed no physical trauma. No drugs. No neurological anomalies. Nothing, except something faint. A small metallic fragment embedded in the base of his left foot, like a splinter. Lab analysis showed an alloy not used in any commercial or domestic manufacturing. Its molecular structure was crystalline. Refractive. It bent light in ways that distorted even digital imaging. It's now stored in a vacuum-sealed container at the FBI's Materials Archive in Quantico. They labeled it, in classified specimen number 44RS, mirror shard. But here's where things turn from strange to impossible. In 2015, a schoolteacher in Montgomery, over 90 miles from Brentwood Hollow, opened her classroom one morning to find the word Jamari etched into the blackboard. Not written. Etched. Like with a blade. No alarms had gone off. The building was locked. Security footage showed no entry between 11:00 p.m. and 6:45 a.m. She asked her students if any of them had done it. None even knew the name. The principal ordered it cleaned. A janitor tried to scrub it off. The chalkboard cracked. They eventually replaced the whole panel. 2 weeks later, same thing. Same name. Etched. Then, over the next 6 months, 4 other schools across the state reported similar events. Always the name. Always etched. Sometimes with a date beneath it. Always October 13, 1993. The day Jamari vanished. That's when a quiet, internal memo was circulated among retired agents. The subject line read, "Are we sure it was just one?" Some started to believe the gym wasn't a burial site. It was a gateway. Not metaphorical. Not spiritual. But something else. Something older. And whatever it was, it wasn't sealed. Not really. Because on January 3, 2016, nearly 23 years after he disappeared, someone using Jamari Lattimore's social security number checked into a hospital in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The patient was male, approximately 18 years old in appearance, severely dehydrated, suffering from retrograde amnesia and light-induced seizure response. But what shocked the hospital staff wasn't his condition. It was that when they tried to take his picture for records, no image appeared. The lens captured the room, the chair, the wall behind him, but not him. They tried 3 different devices. Same result. He was there. People could touch him, talk to him, but cameras wouldn't see him. He was transferred to a private clinic 4 days later. No record exists of him after that. But someone, somewhere, kept watching. Because in 2020, a sealed document appeared in an internal bureau data drop. No author. No origin. No agency code. Just 6 typed words. We sent one in. It came back. After the 2020 data drop, a quiet investigation was reopened, not officially, and not under any standard department. It fell under an umbrella group inside the Bureau known only by its shorthand, Sable. No public references to Sable exist. No mission statements. No agents listed under the name. But according to a whistleblower transcript from 2021, leaked via a heavily redacted FOIA request, Sable handles non-conforming return phenomena. Their directive is not to solve, not to prosecute, only to observe, and, if necessary, contain. The report listed one particular observation, a pattern that had re-emerged. Beginning in late 2019 and accelerating through 2022, 11 separate hospitals across 4 southern states reported pediatric patients with unexplained behavioral episodes. The children, all between the ages of 9 and 12, experienced identical symptoms. Sudden nighttime disassociation, involuntary drawing or carving of circular symbols, unresponsive staring toward corners of darkened rooms, referring to an empty boy or the boy with the mirror voice. In each case, the children had no history of trauma, mental illness, or prior hallucinations. Several spoke in their sleep using words their parents claimed weren't part of their vocabulary. Words like subterra, the listening wall, the cold of inside. But perhaps most disturbing was the physical evidence left behind. One child, an 11-year-old girl named Raylene, had drawn a complete floor plan in crayon of a structure her parents claimed she had never seen before. The floor plan, when submitted anonymously online to a paranormal analysis forum, was immediately identified by a former engineer who had worked in Brentwood Hollow in the late 90s. It matched, precisely, the layout of the old gymnasium, including the underground chambers, which were never made public. The girl claimed the empty boy showed her. She described him as not see-through, but not full either, with a voice that sounded backwards even when he was quiet. She said he never touched her. Only pointed. Only whispered from corners. When asked why he came to her, she reportedly answered, "Because I'm a window." He said I cracked. 3 days later, her drawing stopped. So did her speech. She hasn't spoken since. Her room remains locked. Her mother claims she only sleeps during the day. At night, she sits in the corner, facing away from the bed, humming in low, hollow tones. She hums one note, repeating, "Steady," a vibration that, according to one therapist who recorded it, disrupts certain nearby electronics. Phones glitch. Clocks lose time. One camcorder used to film her humming failed completely, but continued recording internal audio of something breathing slowly behind the lens. No one else was in the room. The file ended there. But across the country, in Washington, D.C., someone else had been watching. His name was Ellis Crane, a former archivist for the Bureau, long retired, mostly forgotten. But Ellis had been the one who cataloged the Jamari file back in 2002. He'd never forgotten it, especially the mirror. And when that audio file, the one with the child's voice whispering the mirror still works, landed in the system, Ellis began building his own archive. Quietly. Obsessively. Outside protocol. He started with map overlays. When he compared drone topography of Brentwood Hollow from 1993 to recent aerial imaging from 2020, something odd emerged. The grove, the one marked Do Not Disturb on the original zoning map, had grown back. But not evenly. The tree ring patterns formed a spiral. Not visible on the ground. Only from high above. The spiral's center? The exact site of the old gymnasium. And at its outer edge, new saplings had begun to grow. In a perfect circle. Ellis noted that the species of tree growing there wasn't native to Alabama. They were eastern red cedars. The same type often planted in graveyards for their association with spiritual boundaries. But none had been planted. No seeds. No roots nearby. They had simply appeared. The soil analysis showed trace elements of ash, but not from wood. It was bone ash. Ellis sent his findings to a contact still working in the bureau, someone he trusted. But days after the data transfer, Ellis disappeared. His apartment was left untouched. Dishes in the sink. Clothes laid out for the next day. But his computer was missing. Not stolen, removed. Only one thing remained at the center of his desk, a single Polaroid. The photo showed a mirror. Same black frame. Same shape. But this time, the reflection showed not the room, but what looked like the inside of a school hallway. Lit with flickering overhead lights. And on the far end of that hallway, blurred but unmistakable, a child standing perfectly still. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. Clothes torn. And scratched into the bottom of the photo, in faint red ink. He's learning how to stay. After Ellis Crane's disappearance, most within the Bureau assumed his case would be filed away with a quiet footnote, possible voluntary exit. No foul play suspected. But one person didn't let it go. Her name was Maya Thorne, a former junior analyst in the Behavioral Threat Assessment Unit. She had worked under Claudia Rusk briefly, before Rusk vanished in 2004. Most didn't even remember that. But Maya did. She remembered the stacks of boxes Claudia kept under her desk. The black notebooks. The photocopies of children's drawings. The names she whispered under her breath like mantras, Jamari. LMCD. The boy who isn't. After the Ellis photo leaked internally, Maya pulled Claudia's personnel file. Most of it was redacted. But buried in the archived psych review was a single phrase, flagged but never followed up. She believes the disappearances are recursive, not linear. That whatever took them, remembers. Maya requested access to the sealed mirror evidence. Denied. She filed a secondary request under psychological profile cross-comparison. Denied again. But in 2021, she traveled, unofficially, to Brentwood Hollow. She didn't contact local law enforcement. Didn't notify her superiors. She simply drove south, in her own vehicle, with only a GPS printout and a copy of the 1993 school blueprints Claudia had once traced. She found the site. Now, it's just woods. Thick and quiet, like the trees were planted not just to grow, but to guard. No markers. No foundations. Just a slight indentation in the earth where the gym once stood. But Maya noticed something strange. Birds didn't enter the grove. She watched for almost 2 hours. Saw them flying around the edges. Perching on fences and branches, but never inward. Even squirrels skirted it. It was as if the forest itself had created a dead zone. She stepped in. Took exactly 7 paces before she felt it. A shift. The temperature didn't change, but the sound did. Muffled. Muted. Like standing inside a soundproof room. Her own breathing felt louder. More present. When she stopped walking, she realized her ears had popped, but the air pressure hadn't changed. Then, the scratching. It came from beneath her feet. Soft at first, like roots dragging through soil. Then louder. Scraping. Etching. She dropped to her knees and brushed aside the moss. Beneath it, wood. Blackened. Burnt. But not completely rotted. And carved into it, over and over again, the same word in spiraling formation. Again. She stood. Backed away. The wind had stopped completely. And then, faintly, from somewhere behind the trees, a voice. Not yelling. Not whispering. Just speaking, plainly. You can't name what doesn't end. She turned. No one. No movement. No tracks. Not even her own were visible anymore. She left that night. But she took a photo before she did of the carved wood. When she enhanced it back home, something else emerged. Etched between the letters of again was a set of initials. JL. And just beneath that, another one. CR. Claudia Rusk had been there. That confirmed everything Maya feared. Because the next file she pulled, the last unofficial memo Claudia wrote before disappearing, described what she called the loop. According to her notes, the disappearances didn't happen randomly. They followed a cycle. Every 12 years, the location where the mirror had been last active began to radiate. People in the surrounding area reported symptoms, vivid dreams, shadow hallucinations, growing fear of silence. Then came the name, Jamari, written where no hand had touched. Then, one child disappeared. But the mirror didn't just take. It learned. Adapted. Each time it returned, it required more. A broader reach. A louder echo. And then Claudia wrote one final, chilling sentence. We didn't lose them. We opened the door and taught it how to knock. Maya tried to warn someone. She brought her findings to a retired agent, one of Rusk's former colleagues. But before she could share the files, her car was broken into. Her apartment searched. No hard drives were stolen. Only the photo. And the notebook. Maya disappeared 2 months later. The last known footage of her was captured by a traffic camera outside Brentwood Hollow. She was standing by the side of the road, staring into the woods. Beside her was a child. A young boy, facing the trees. His clothes were modern. His expression blank. But when the footage was enhanced, it showed something impossible. His feet weren't touching the ground. And behind him, just for a moment, was the faint outline of a black rectangle. A shape. A frame. A mirror. Then the footage glitched. Restarted. Maya was gone. Only the boy remained. Spring, 2022. Mount Vernon Elementary, Mississippi. A substitute teacher arrived for a routine 6th grade English class. The usual teacher had called out sick. Nothing unusual, until second period, when a student named Micah Odom, age 11, failed to return from the restroom. The building was small. Only 2 corridors. One entrance in, one out. Security footage was active, but when checked later, showed nothing past 9:48 a.m. That's the exact moment Micah entered the hallway. He never came back. At first, the school assumed he had simply wandered or perhaps slipped out. A search was launched. Doors were locked. Classrooms checked. The fire alarm was triggered to flush anyone out. Nothing. Micah's bag remained on his desk. His coat still on the hook. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. No exits unlocked. The janitor later reported something odd, not alarming at first, just strange. He said the mirror in the staff restroom near room 2B, a small, square panel hung above a cracked porcelain sink, had been wet. But not like someone had just used it. He said it looked like condensation, as if steam had built up, though there was no source of heat, no shower, no nearby pipes. And on the surface of the glass, there were fingerprints. Tiny. Child-sized. Pressed against the inside of the mirror. Micah Odom's body was never found. But 3 days later, another child at the same school, a second grader named Tyson Hale, began having dreams. He described them in detail to his mother. He's not gone, Tyson said. He's just under it. Where the light goes thin. What's under what? His mother asked. The school, Tyson said. But not our school. The other one. The one that breathes. Tyson started drawing. Not like a child, but with geometric precision. Spiral diagrams. Hatch marks. Concentric rings. He drew the same figure over and over, a boy with no eyes, standing inside a circle, holding one hand behind his back. And then, on the 5th night, Tyson said something that stopped his mother cold. He told her. He says his name is Jamari. That same week, an independent researcher who had been following the Brentwood Hollow case online, a former geospatial analyst named Angela Duran, published a blog post with time-stamped heat maps overlaying 5 known disappearance sites. What she discovered stunned even the most hardened skeptics. Every disappearance involving the name Jamari, or connected to the mirror loop, occurred within 1 degree of geomagnetic anomaly spikes. The strongest spike? Right beneath Brentwood Hollows Grove. Angela's post was taken down within 72 hours. The domain was wiped. Her email returned undeliverable, but a cached copy survived. And in it, one sentence stood out in bold. It's not the mirror that moves, it's the threshold. It returns to where it was fed. In the following months, more schools began reporting similar disturbances. 1 in Tennessee, 2 in Georgia, a private academy in southern Florida. Each time, a missing child, an unexplained electrical failure. And at least one witness, usually another student, who reported a boy with no shadow standing at the end of a hallway or behind a bathroom stall door. Sometimes they said he spoke. Sometimes he only looked. But always, there was a mirror nearby. In fall of 2022, a new lead emerged. A child in rural Louisiana, a 12-year-old named DeAndre Wilson, was found walking alone along a service road near the Atchafalaya Basin. He was dehydrated, confused, and repeating one phrase over and over. "It's too loud inside." When questioned, he said he had been in a place where there were no windows. Only walls that whispered. He said the walls knew his name. That they called to him when he tried to sleep. That he saw others, but they weren't awake like him. Just standing. Stuck. He described being pulled through a door made of shiny black water and waking up in the woods. Medical tests showed no signs of injury, but his fingernails had trace elements of charred wood embedded underneath. Like he had been clawing through something old. Burned. When asked if he remembered how he got out, he simply said, "She found me." When asked who she was, he pointed to a drawing of several figures, some childlike, some distorted, and placed his finger over a rough sketch of a woman with long, dark hair and a badge on her hip. No one had told him about Claudia Rusk. But when shown a photo of her from 2003, DeAndre nodded. "She walked me out." But Rusk was presumed dead. No trace of her had been found in nearly 2 decades. Unless she had never truly left. Unless somehow, like Jamari, she had become part of the loop. A guide. Or a guardian. Or a prisoner. No one could say for sure. But one final piece came weeks later, when DeAndre, still under observation, handed a nurse a piece of folded paper. It was a drawing. In it, the mirror. The chalk circle. The boy without eyes. And behind him, standing just outside the frame, was a woman. Older now. Tired. But watching. Beneath the image, in jagged handwriting. She keeps him from learning her name. By winter 2022, the whispers reached D.C. But not through press or media. Not through formal reports. It came as it always did, quietly, through internal leaks, fragmented memos, and personnel transfers that never made sense on paper. One internal message, redacted and marked for need to know only, was leaked by an anonymous whistleblower on January 12. The contents were brief. 3 lines. Threshold may be active again. Initiate containment at all schools within the 29. 3 degrees 34.5 degrees North Corridor. Do not engage unless observed breach is confirmed. No one explained what containment meant. But across 5 states, low-level government contractors arrived unannounced at over a dozen rural elementary schools. They installed new mirrors. Large, wall-mounted, seamless. With no screws. No labels. No manufacturer records. They called them reflective security panels. But they didn't reflect normally. Some janitors noticed that when cleaning them, their hands looked slightly delayed in the glass. One teacher said she caught her own reflection blinking out of sync. Another, in Georgia, claimed she turned her back to the mirror during detention duty and heard someone breathing behind her. When she turned, there was no one. Just the mirror. Except her reflection was gone for a moment. Then returned. Smiling. She filed a formal incident report and was placed on administrative leave. She never returned to teaching. In February 2023, a major breach occurred. Silver Point Academy, a boarding school in South Carolina, reported not one but 4 missing students in the same 24-hour period. All boys. All between the ages of 10 and 13. All last seen entering the lower hall bathrooms on different floors. Security footage again failed. Each boy's last known location was captured on separate cameras, all at exactly 11:44 p.m., despite the students being in different dorm wings. Every clock on the property froze at 11:44 that night. They began ticking again at 11:47, but when they did, each clock displayed a different time. None could be resynchronized. When the mirrors in the 4 respective bathrooms were examined the next morning, each one was dry, yet covered in faint residue. An analysis showed the substance to be a mix of ash, calcium, and trace elements of glass polish. Forensic teams could not determine the source. In one stall, a message had been left on the underside of the toilet tank lid, etched in what was later confirmed to be fingernail scratches. Stop teaching him names. He remembers them. This event forced a temporary nationwide review of reflective infrastructure in federally funded schools. But nothing came of it. The documents vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Most parents were never told. News outlets were fed substitute stories. Silver Point Academy shut down for renovations and quietly rebranded under a different name. But those watching, the quiet ones, the ones left from Claudia Rusk's generation, they knew. The mirror hadn't just returned. It was building something. A presence. A way to stay. In late March 2023, an unmarked vehicle arrived in Brentwood Hollow. It carried a 3-man team. No names. No agencies. They worked overnight in the woods where the old gym once stood. Residents reported strange lights that night, low pulses through the trees. No noise. No footsteps. Just a slow rhythmic flicker that made dogs whimper and porch lights short out. The next morning, the grove was gone. Completely. Every tree. Every stone. Every trace. In its place, flat earth. Too flat. Like it had never grown anything. Local kids called it the erased field. Nothing grows there now. Not grass. Not moss. Not even weeds. But one man returned in April. An old forestry worker named John Varley, who had helped clear the original site back in the 70s. He stood at the center of the field, staring at the sky. When a journalist from a small-town paper asked him what he was looking for, he said, "The crack. I used to think it was under the school. Now I think the school was under it." She asked what he meant. He looked her dead in the eyes and said, "It doesn't want to take them anymore. It wants them to stay and learn how to leave it." Then, in July 2023, one final appearance. A hiker near Talladega National Forest was walking a trail just after dawn. He saw something odd in the mist, a shape on the path ahead. At first he thought it was an animal. Then it stood. A boy. Maybe 12. Barefoot. Dirty clothes. No facial expression. The hiker called out. The boy didn't respond. He raised his camera and took a single photo. What the photo showed was impossible. The boy was there. Clear. In focus. But his shadow was missing. And behind him, through the trees, the camera picked up something else. A shimmer. A tall, black rectangle. Like glass. But with no reflection. And from within it, hands. Small hands. Pressed against the inside. As if dozens of children were standing just behind the surface, waiting. Reaching. One last line was reported by the hiker, who refused to release his name. He said as he ran, just before the boy vanished into the trees, he heard a sound. Not speech. Not a scream. Just a knock. From the inside. Once. Then silence. Summer, 2023. Internal memo, Sable Div. Subject, activity surge, pattern disruption, echo bloom, events. The report was brief but chilling. It is no longer about disappearance. It is about presence. The mirror does not extract, it imprints. The boy is not coming back. He is becoming us. The following weeks brought the largest wave of activity since 2002. But this time, it wasn't limited to children. Adults began to experience something new, the echo effect. People living miles from former disappearance sites began reporting the same dream. A hallway. No doors. Lights buzzing overhead. A child at the end. Standing still. Watching. Mouthing words no one could hear. In some cases, dreamers woke with physical symptoms, nosebleeds, memory lapses, or, most disturbingly, mirror phobia. One woman in Atlanta refused to enter her own bathroom for 3 days after waking up with the word hollow fogged onto the inside of her medicine cabinet glass. She lived alone. Then, an event that shifted everything. September 11, 2023, Brentwood Hollow Church Revival. The newly rebuilt community church, less than a mile from where the old school once stood, held an evening revival. Over 80 people in attendance. Singing. Preaching. Fellowship. At 8:43 p.m., the power went out. A backup generator kicked in, but the lights in the main hall flickered inconsistently. At 8:44, a child walked in through the rear doors. No one recognized him. No parent claimed him. No one saw him enter from outside. He walked slowly up the center aisle, stopped just short of the pulpit, turned around, and stood, facing the congregation. People described him as impossibly still. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. He simply watched. And in that moment, the mirrors cracked. Every reflective surface in the building, bathroom glass, choir room panel, polished offering trays, split down the center. Not shattered. Not exploded. Just split. As though something had gently torn through the idea of reflection itself. Then the child spoke. Or rather, everyone heard something, but no one could agree on the words. Some said it sounded like a name. Others said it was a place. A few swore it wasn't even language. But all agreed on one thing. The sound didn't come from his mouth. It came from behind their eyes. Then the lights returned. The boy was gone. But on the wall behind the pulpit, in ash or soot or something that couldn't be wiped, one word remained. Again. That was the last time anyone saw him in person. But he kept appearing. On footage. In dreams. In sketches drawn by people who never met, across different states, describing him exactly the same. Dark eyes. Slight build. Torn shirt. And always, always, a mirror behind him. And sometimes, in those dreams, there was someone else. A woman, standing at the edge of the frame. Watching him. Guarding him. Or maybe just, waiting. Final observation. From a psychiatric patient in North Carolina. Age, 67. No known connection to Brentwood Hollow. Suffered from dementia, nonverbal for over a year. In October 2023, during an unexpected moment of lucidity, she grabbed a nurse's arm and said one sentence. He's not lost. He's just learning how to stay in different people. Then she looked at the mirror in the room, smiled, and said, he almost knows your name. And after that, nothing. No official reports. No more internal memos. No more sightings. But sometimes, when the air is still, and your reflection doesn't quite match your expression, and you hear something knock once from the other side of the wall with no pipes. Sometimes you remember his name. Even if you were never told. Jamari.